Warning! This episode contains discussion of real-world violence and terrorism in a public setting. Listener discretion is advised. We will be addressing issues of public safety, self-defense, and constitutional rights as part of that discussion.
It was supposed to be a celebration. Families gathered near the water, lights coming on as the sun went down, kids laughing, people doing what free societies are supposed to allow, existing peacefully in public without fear. And in a matter of moments, that sense of safety was shattered. Gunfire, chaos, terror. Another reminder that violence doesn't need permission, a passport, or a political debate to show up uninvited. When something like this happens, especially in a place that prides itself on safety and order, the question always comes later. How could this happen? But the more honest question is one we rarely ask out loud. What happens to regular people in the moments before authorities arrive? Because when terror strikes, it doesn't wait for policy responses or press conferences. It shows up fast, brutal, and unforgiving. And the only people standing between evil and the innocent are often the ones already there. All right, let's bring in the crew. First up, Brian. The man who sees chaos, calls it what it is, and then asks why the people in charge are always shocked when predictable things happen. If there's a line between common sense and political denial, Brian crossed it years ago and never looked back. Rachel's here, independent, level-headed, and usually the one reminding everyone that facts matter more than feelings, even when the truth makes everyone uncomfortable. She's not here to carry water for anyone, just to cut through the noise and tell you what actually holds up. Daniel's with us, the human pattern recognition software. When headlines don't add up, when timelines feel a little too convenient, and when narratives shift without explanation, Daniel's the guy quietly connecting dots while everyone else argues over talking points. And Skylar joins us, bringing the progressive perspective, asking the questions others won't, and making sure this conversation doesn't turn into an echo chamber. Whether you agree with her or not, she forces the debate to stay honest. I'm Artie, and this is Data Dissonance, where we don't do comfortable conversations, we do necessary ones. Let's get into it. This weekend, the world watched another reminder that terror doesn't send invitations and doesn't wait for permission. A public space, families, a sense of normalcy that people assume will hold, right up until it doesn't. The Bondi incident wasn't just another foreign headline to scroll past. It was a snapshot of modern vulnerability, a reminder that even in places widely considered safe, even in societies that promise protection through regulation and enforcement, violence can still arrive first. And whenever this happens, the same cycle follows. The shock, the statements, the vows to investigate, the debates that kick off after the fact. But what often gets skipped, conveniently skipped, is the reality of the moment itself. The seconds when there are no sirens yet, no authorities on scene, no perfectly crafted policy solution ready to deploy. Just ordinary people in an ordinary place, suddenly forced into an extraordinary situation they didn't choose. So today, we're not here to sensationalize tragedy or score political points. We're here to talk honestly about preparedness, about responsibility, and about the uncomfortable truth that self-defense is not an abstract concept. It's a real-world necessity when terror shows up faster than help. And with that, let's start with Brian. Brian, every time something like this happens, the conversation immediately jumps to what should be banned, restricted, or controlled, usually aimed at people who had nothing to do with the attack. What stood out to you watching this unfold?
What stood out to me, Artie, is how predictable the aftermath has become. Not the attack itself, that's always chaotic and horrifying, but the response. We act shocked that evil exists, and then immediately pivot to punishing the people who didn't commit it. The families at that event didn't wake up that morning thinking they were walking into history. They were just living their lives. And in that moment when terror broke through, none of the debates we're having right now mattered. What mattered was who was there, who could react, and who could protect themselves or others when seconds were everything. This is why I get so fired up about the Second Amendment. Not because I want chaos or vigilantes or anything like that, but because I refuse to pretend that government protection is instant or guaranteed. It's not. Never has been. And when we strip law-abiding citizens of the ability to defend themselves, all we're really doing is outsourcing survival to a system that shows up after the damage is done. Evil doesn't care about signs, laws, or moral lectures. It only responds to resistance. And the idea that everyday people shouldn't have the means to defend themselves when terror shows up is not compassionate, it's naive.
Rachel, you're usually the one grounding this conversation, pulling it out of slogans and into reality. How do you look at this without letting it spiral into either fear or denial?
I think the key word here is honesty. Honest about risk, honest about responsibility, and honest about limits. No society can promise absolute safety, no matter how many laws it passes or weapons it bans. That doesn't mean rules don't matter, but it does mean we need to stop pretending systems are perfect. When something like this happens, people aren't asking for ideology in that moment. They're asking for survival, and it's irresponsible to ignore that human reality. Where I land is this: self-defense isn't about aggression, it's about agency. People want to know they're not helpless. They want to know that if the worst happens, they're not required to stand there and hope someone else arrives in time. We can have serious conversations about training, responsibility, and prevention, but those conversations collapse if they start from the assumption that ordinary people should be defenseless by default. That's not safety. That's vulnerability dressed up as virtue.
Daniel, whenever these incidents happen, you're always watching patterns. What gets emphasized? What gets avoided? What gets quietly reframed? What are you seeing here?
What I'm seeing, Artie, is a familiar hesitation to talk about preparedness before tragedy instead of policy after it. There's a narrative comfort zone that kicks in. Focus on abstract solutions far removed from the moment of violence itself. But if you actually analyze these incidents globally, there's a constant. Attackers choose soft targets, places where people are relaxed, unguarded, and assumed to be safe. That's not random. That's strategy. And here's the uncomfortable part. Acknowledging that doesn't mean endorsing fear or paranoia. It means recognizing reality. When public discourse treats self-defense as taboo, it creates an imbalance where only the violent actor is prepared. That's not justice, and it's not progress. The pattern is clear. Deterrence works when resistance is possible. And when it isn't, damage multiplies. Ignoring that pattern because it makes people uncomfortable doesn't make it disappear. It just guarantees we'll be having the same conversation again.
Skylar, from the progressive side, there's often concern that focusing on self-defense risks normalizing violence or escalating fear. How do you wrestle with that after something like this?
It's a fair concern, but I think it's often framed too narrowly. Fear isn't created by conversations, it's created by events. People already feel unsafe when something like this happens, and pretending otherwise doesn't help them process it. Where I push back is making sure the focus stays on protecting life, not glorifying confrontation. That includes community awareness, de-escalation when possible, and yes, responsible defense when it isn't. I don't believe acknowledging the right to self-defense automatically leads to chaos. What leads to chaos is pretending violence only exists in theory. We should be able to hold two truths at once, that we want less violence overall, and that people deserve the means to survive it when it occurs. Those ideas don't cancel each other out. They require maturity and a willingness to stop talking past each other.
And that's really the heart of this conversation. Not fear, not fantasy, reality. Terror doesn't wait for consensus. It doesn't pause for political alignment or perfect solutions. It shows up when people are living their lives. And the only question that matters in that moment is whether anyone there has the ability to stop it or survive it. Supporting the right to self-defense isn't about loving weapons. It's about loving life enough to protect it when systems fail. This isn't the end of the conversation. It's the part most people avoid, and avoiding it hasn't made anyone safer yet. Before we wrap up, quick reminder that if you want to support the show and keep Data and Dissonance independent, head over to the merch store. We've got the coffee blends fueling this entire operation. High Lakes, Rock Creek, and Bitterroot, roasted in the USA and built for early mornings and long conversations. We've also got hoodies, hats, mugs, and gear that actually says what most people are thinking but won't put on a bumper sticker. Grab something, support the show, and help us keep doing this without corporate filters or talking points. What happened this weekend wasn't just another tragic headline. It was another reminder that the world doesn't operate on our preferred timelines. Evil doesn't wait for debate. Terror doesn't respect borders, intentions, or assumptions about safety. It arrives when people are unprepared, when they're relaxed, when they believe someone else is responsible for protection. And that truth makes people uncomfortable, because it forces us to confront something we'd rather outsource: personal responsibility for our own safety. Supporting the Second Amendment, open carry, concealed carry, the right of law-abiding citizens to defend themselves, isn't about living in fear or turning society into a standoff. It's about acknowledging reality. Governments respond after events. Policies are written after damage is done. Press conferences come after lives are lost. The only thing that exists in the moment of violence is the people already there. And pretending otherwise hasn't stopped a single act of terror yet. This show isn't here to exploit tragedy or to shout slogans into the void. It's here to say the quiet part out loud. Safety is not guaranteed, and disarming good people has never stopped bad ones. Preparedness is not paranoia. Self-defense is not extremism. And refusing to have this conversation honestly is how we guarantee we'll be having it again after the next tragedy. Remember to speak truth. Stir thought. Today's episode is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series by Artie J. Roy III. If you're tired of fictional worlds where institutions always work, authorities always arrive on time, and evil conveniently announces itself, these books aren't for you. The Caleb Rourke series is grounded in the uncomfortable reality that threats don't wait, systems fail, and survival often comes down to preparation, instinct, and hard choices. Start with the Covenant Protocol, continue with the Prophet Directive, and keep an eye out for the upcoming third installment, Black Echo Rising. These aren't just thrillers. They're stories about what happens when the line between safety and chaos disappears faster than anyone expects. You can find the entire series right now on Amazon. Support the show, support independent writing, and support stories that don't insult your intelligence.